Marker.
All right, guys, we are all about the past, present, and future. I am bringing you a topic that is relevant in the present, reaches into the past, and we need to talk about it regarding the future. We're spanning all time.
Okay.
All right.
I went down a YouTube rabbit hole the other night, which was really fun, on where different countries have gotten their names.
Oh, I've wondered this.
And it was fascinating. And I could use that, but it was a really popular YouTube video, so I'm like, I don't want to do a podcast on really popular YouTube videos. So what I want to talk about is, where do our states in America get their names?
Oh. Like, I'm really curious about Arkansas and Kansas. That one fascinates me.
One of them is wrong.
Is it Kansas or is it Arkansas?
So the interesting thing about our state names, where do you feel most of our state names probably have come from? Like nationality, England, France, like, what would you say?
I would say...
My first thought was Native American.
That is correct.
My first thought was going to be Native American, but then I was going to say England. But it's more Native American than England?
26 of our 50 states come from some Native American or indigenous person, word, language, or something along those lines. Now, 11 of our state names are English.
Okay.
Or if you want to throw a little Latin in there, sometimes we mix
Sure.
Latin with our English. 5 are Spanish. 3 are French, and there are 5 that are disputed. Disputed means they just don't know, but of those 5, all 5 of them, they think more than likely came from the indigenous people. So that ups the number to 31 of our states.
Okay.
More than likely come from the indigenous languages. So let's talk about just a few that I've picked out. Where have certain states gotten their names?
Okay, let's do it. Alabama.
Alabama. All right. That is a Choctaw, which is the original language, and it means the thicket clears or plant clusters. If you've ever been to Alabama, it is thick brush.
Bro,
It is very thick.
I lived there for 2 years.
Did live there. The Choctaw word is Alabamu.
Okay.
Alabama.
Let's go to California. California is a Spanish. Very good.
Okay.
But it is probably named after a fictional island because the original Spanish explorers thought that California was an island because they had to cross bodies of water to get into it.
There's like, yeah, it's probably an island.
Didn't we cross a lake back there?
It's like one of the longest states.
This fictional island was ruled by Queen Calafia in the 16th century from the novel Las Sargas de Españolandia. I got a D
I took
in Spanish.
I took Spanish in high school.
I
Let me
got a
see.
D.
Las Sergas de Esplandian.
We've just lost our Spanish viewers.
Yeah, we're losing views.
The accent's where you put the accent.
At any rate, it's a... Is that how that works? No wonder I got a D. So that's where California comes from. Another one that I thought was interesting, the state that we live in, Illinois.
Oh, that's Native American.
It is Native American. It is technically a French adaptation to a Native American word, but it is Native American. The Algonquin people had a word, Alinwiwa.
Okay.
So the French would have been like Illinois because
Exactly,
like, 'cause it's
which-
French.
Boom.
But, so then whenever we're all high and mighty making fun of people who call it Illinois, we're getting it way wrong by calling it Illinois.
Illinois.
I didn't make that connection though, because it ends with wa in the Native American, but wa in French is O-I-S.
O-I-S.
Mississippi is a Native American word that means great river.
It means lots of S's and hard to spell.
What does Montana mean?
What does Montana mean?
It sounds like the Spanish word for mountain.
Or mountain. I'm going to say mountain.
That is correct.
All right.
Yay! We did it.
New Mexico, I thought was really fascinating. Where do you think New Mexico got its name?
I mean, this
Probably
one
from
seems-
Old Mexico,
I was gonna
right?
say, this one seems about the easiest. They had Mexico already, and then they were like, here's a new one.
What if I told you that New Mexico got its name before the nation of Mexico was called Mexico?
What?
Yes.
Now, hold on.
There is a city in what we now know of Mexico called Mexico City in the Mexico Valley. So the person who named New Mexico was actually naming it after the valley
In what is
where
now Mexico.
City. It was New Spain until 1821, guys.
New
That's what
Mexico was New
No,
Spain?
Mexico,
Oh, Mexico.
was New Spain. Washington. I'm kidding. We know where Washington
Okay, yeah,
got its
there we
name.
go.
Is there a state that you wonder about that you want to know? Where did it get its name?
Alaska.
Alaska is technically a word that has to do with the Aleutian Islands that come off. It's a Native American word that the Russians changed. So the original word for Alaska means the way of the current, and it talked about how the currents pass through those islands. The Russian people took that word, which was Alakshak, and changed it to Alaska.
What's the deal with Kansas and Arkansas?
Okay, so there was a Native American people called the Kaw, and the French people called a river around the Kaw the Kansas River, and that's where the state gets its name. Arkansas is the plural form of Kansas. The arc in front of it makes it plural.
So Arkansas is just another Kansas.
It's from the same Native American language.
It's Kansas 2. Hey, sometimes the sequels are better.
New Mexico
was
kind of like
technically a prequel.
Yeah, that's weird. On first hand, my knee-jerk reaction is to be like, why did all these white dudes that were pretty racist back in the day name a bunch of things after Native American things? But then on the other hand, you think about a lot of people would just show up and explore it, and they brought along Native American guides and all kinds of things. You'd be like, what is that? And they'd be like, this is what it's called. And you'd be like, all right.
Indiana. Let's talk about Indiana.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
This is where we're getting into the present. The state legislature in Indianapolis just passed a ban on renaming Indianapolis because they like being called Indianapolis. It is named Indianapolis in Indiana because there were fur traders from Pennsylvania who displaced Native Americans out of Ohio into Indiana and then decided to try to displace them again in Indiana, where they put all of the Native Americans, is what we'll call them. And then once they started fighting with each other, they called it the land of the Indians, and that's where Indiana got its name.
I don't know why I've never thought of
yeah.
Indiana having the word Indian in it. That makes me cringe.
That's horrible.
Here's where this is a problem. The Cleveland Indians just announced that they are changing their name because it is offensive to the indigenous people of America. I'm a football fan. I don't even want to say the name of the Washington football team because it was just flat out
They're
racist.
just called the Washington football team right now.
But there are and have been Native Americans since the 1970s who have passionately been protesting the name of Indiana.
Rightfully so.
And the question is, should they be changing their state name?
100%.
Wow, I have never thought about that.
I mean, I've never thought about it either, but it makes so much sense now. And
That shows that-
Indianapolis, like metropolis, the opolis, it just means city.
Right.
That just shows you our privilege. And
No, I know. We never even
the
had
fact
to
that we've
consider
never had to think about that. Yeah.
So this gets into the discussion as three white guys who are, we're living in this climate with this social commentary that's taking place, that's being elevated regarding the other things tied to American heritage, whether it be statues commemorating Confederate generals or politicians, or anything that has to do with the indigenous people of America. How far should we go? Our opinion, I think we would collectively say, is we need to do away with anything that subjugates anybody.
we could pick a new name.
It's not that hard. It's
Pick a new
fun.
name.
It's fun. It could be Statey McState.
It's not Statey McState. That's a
And
ter-
City McCity.
It seems pretty easy to just pick a new state name. Now, that's easy for us to say. We're not from Indiana. I imagine it would be harder for like a person who grew up and lived their whole life. A relative of mine played basketball in the Olympics, like from Notre Dame. Like he just like all about Indiana. Like it's part of their family history. And so like I imagine for them saying your state needs to be changed, they'd be like,
There's a sentimental tie, there's the heritage of the people that are from there. But more than that, the politicians in Indiana are saying it's a waste of time and money. It takes so much time and costs so much money, and we would have to rebrand professional sports teams. We would have to rebrand signage and money, anything that has to do with like banking and stuff like that.
Poor rich white guys. They got to change some names and spend some money.
Probably not going to happen. It will probably always be called Indiana.
It will never happen. But I mean, we're literally sitting on stolen land from people that we just completely murdered off the face of the planet. And they are still around, and they still passionately care about their rights and their culture and everything else. And just having one of the 50 states sitting there slapping you in the face with your racial slur? Come on.
And to clarify to that point, why do people get so upset with the word Indian? And the reason for that is because that was a word that the colonizers, the conquerors, if you will, the white individuals, or even Spanish and French and British, all of them, when they came in, they thought that they were going to India. This area was called the West Indies, so they just gave them the name Indians.
basically like, you look different than me. You must be from India.
Right. And the people whose identity and land was stolen saying, no, we have an identity. Call us by our names. And if you're not going to call us by our names, at least acknowledge that we are the indigenous people of this region. And that's where there's a problem with the team name and also with the state name and the city name.
I have the solution.
Okay.
Let's call it Hoogia. And
Hoogia.
Hoosiapolis.
No, we could flip the table and we could call it like Crackerton.
Crackerton.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, we
How
could
would
do
you like that? Yeah. If your state was called Crackianda And he's like, oh, Crackerville.
Crackyiopolis, Crackyanda.
Or throw in any other stereotype slur for your ethnicity, nationality, whatever it is. Like, you'd be flipping your lid.
I think the unfortunate thing is that word, Indian, that's just now becoming faux pas. It is like in the early stages of being faux pas.
Yeah.
Whereas there are other words which I can't say that were in the common vernacular for years that took a while for people to realize, we probably shouldn't say that, to let's not say that, to that's wrong that we ever said that.
Yeah.
That word Indian has not yet gone down that path.
When we were
yet.
kids, we still called it playing cowboys and Indians.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah, it's just part of the way we talk.
Part of the way we talk.
And it needs to be addressed, and some things need to be corrected.
Isn't it interesting, though, to the point that you were saying a second ago, that staring us right in the face,
It's the neighboring state.
and the fact that it's mixed in with
Yeah.
31 other states that we have given homage to the indigenous people.
Right.
And this one right here, I do think that when it was initially named, they felt that they were maybe paying homage to the Mighty Warriors, but come on, that's the wrong word.
As recently as the 20th century, it was illegal to perform some Native American dances. This isn't ancient history that we're dealing with. This is cultural modern history now. That culture still now had to fill out on their U.S. Census in 2020. Their ethnicity was
Other.
something else because they didn't have indigenous American or indigenous people or whatever, anything that represented them.
I know we normally talk about and we have fun with topics, and we even did with this one. We had fun with all the different state names, but these are conversations that are important to have, to work out and to work through, because this has bearing on our future. And Danny, you've made comments before. If we don't understand the trajectory of our past and how we got here, we're just going to keep making the same mistakes again, which we need to try to avoid, which is why we need to talk about this.
Yeah, we definitely should. I mean, I think it's at least, if it's not a thing that's going to be seriously taken as a name change, it's a conversation that should be continually had.
Absolutely.